Allyson Park, Senior Vice President and Chief Communications Officer at Walmart, talks to host Doug Simon on PR's Top Pros Talk.
I'm really excited to speak with Allyson. She's smart, as you would surmise, but fun and no pressure. Let's start with, how do you explain the work of Walmart in a way that really resonates with the audience? I mean, there's so much to choose from.
Yeah, look, that can be really hard, but it comes down to a few things. First, Walmart serves people in real life at real scale. And we help millions of customers each week save money and live better all over the world. And that's really done through our 2.1 million associates. What's I think unique is that we sit at the intersection of everyday life, whether that's food, whether that's healthcare, whether that's technology, jobs, sustainability, small businesses. So when I explain Walmart, I like to say we're a people-led, tech-powered, omni-channel retailer dedicated to helping people save money and live better. And what's in that sentence are sometimes the extremes. Like, how are you people-led and tech-powered? How do you serve people through e-commerce and in our stores and clubs? How do you help people save money and live better? And I think no one can do those two extremes better than a company like Walmart.
Yeah, and you're also very focused on helping your team and give advice to others advancing their careers. How can people in communications become the CEOs of their own careers?
Yeah, I love that line. Be the CEO of your career. And that's really about one, understanding your own ambition, understanding, the trade-offs you're willing to make. And you've got to think like a business leader first, not just focus on the title. And the best thing I did for my own career was I took leadership roles outside of traditional communications, whether that was leading strategic initiatives or government affairs and policy, sustainability, a global foundation, portfolio management, which is all around renovating and innovating products. And so my real advice is don't chase titles, chase capability, stack skills, learn how your business operates. And the communicators who thrive today are really the ones who can connect all the dots. You've got to play at that enterprise level. You have to manage your career like a portfolio, not a ladder.
Right. Now, you're quite the go-getter, obviously, to have had the career that you've had. Are there suggestions for people who might feel a little hesitancy or sort of might not have that as part of their core that might help them move forward and sort of take that step up to really be the CEO of their career?
Yeah, look, I think the CEO of your career is actually applicable to anyone with whatever they want to do. It's about instead of waiting for your boss to lean in and say, hey, would you like to do this? It's about you having a development plan. It's about you being, a constant learner. It's about you owning your career and not at the end of your life looking back and saying, I wish I would have done this. I wish I would have done that. So I think it applies to a stay-at-home mom. I think it applies to stay-at-home dad. I think it applies to someone who decides to go back to school. I think it decides to someone who works trade, which is equally as important as working in an office. It applies to our frontline as much as it applies to, someone in our tech team. And it's just really about owning your career, owning the choices that you're going to make, being happy with your life. You have one life. And I'm a big believer that no one's looking out for you more than you should. So you've got to be in the pilot mode for your career versus just deciding what's going to come to you and being okay with that.
Yeah, and when it comes to mentorship, I find that the most successful leaders are both mentors and mentees themselves, learning from others, not necessarily part of the hierarchical chain. But as a leader, are there some tips you have that might make it easier to advise people who are, say, lower in the hierarchy, just starting out, or maybe have hit a roadblock in their career to grow and learn and get around that?
Look, we're all in the roles we're in today because someone leaned in and helped us. And that was true for me as well. I was in my senior year of college and really did not have a job landed and just reached out to a bunch of CEOs to get some help. And so we all have to start somewhere. And I think people are in general usually willing to help. I know I am. And, it really comes to start with what do you want to do and what do you want to learn? And then who can help you do that? And I'm a big believer in reverse mentorship as much as I am in being a mentor, a sponsor, a mentee. We're all building skills and wanting to stay curious. We've got to always be in learning mode. And I think leaders have to role model that learning themselves. The healthiest cultures learn in every direction.
Yeah, and that reverse mentorship is really that mentee mentor combination all within one person that I was speaking about before.
Too many times people look at the mentor as the person up a couple rungs in the hierarchy. And that's actually not what I'm suggesting. I'm suggesting talk to people who are at lower levels in your organization. One of the reasons why I've taught for the past 4 years at University of Florida is I learned so much from those students. So don't think that your learning only comes from your boss or your boss's boss or your boss's boss's boss. It actually can come from your colleague. It can come from someone who just joining the organization. It can come from a student. It can come from your kids. It's just amazing if you're just open to learning how much you can actually learn and that can help you and you can apply to your role.
Though employees really need to take ownership of their own growth on that. So any tips that they can do to do that better?
Yeah, I mean, raise your hand before you feel fully ready. Years ago in my career, I had an instance where someone was leaving, and I just went to my boss and I said, "Look, if I can help in any way, I know I'm not ready for that role yet, but I'd be more than happy to lean in, take on extra work. I've got the capacity." So a lot of your career growth can come from saying yes to the experiences that really stretch you. Go out for the job that no one wants. Stay late, put in some extra hours. Don't wait for influence to be granted to you. It comes from, understanding the business, bringing solutions, and building trust consistently. And you do that through your say and your do being aligned, and then that follow through. So, for me, it like little things over my career. Like when I first started out, we had a closet of all of our samples, and it was a mess. And I
Mhm.
stayed one night late, and I just reorganized it. Nobody asked me to do that, but it would improve efficiency and our effectiveness when we were running and building press kits and things like that. So just lean into the things that no one else is doing. Be a great teammate. Be a kind colleague, and people will come to you, and the work will come to you, and the opportunities will come to you. And then lean in when you see someone's job that you're like, "Oh, I want that job." Ask to shadow them, ask to spend a little bit of time, go grab coffee, learn from others.
Yeah, and there are these key moments. I mean, what you were talking about resonated with me personally. My staff sort of teases me when I say, well, at my last job, and they're like, Doug, your last job was 40 plus years ago because the company is going to celebrate the 40th anniversary. But they just want, but that,
Congratulations.
thank you. But that was the opportunity. I was doing traditional PR. I was an account team for then it was Boys Clubs of America. It hadn't become Boys and Girls Clubs yet. It was my account. And we had a video production person who did video news releases. I'd also worked in video, was working at NBC Sports on weekends. And when my boss let her go, we wanted to hire someone else. And I said, hey, give me a chance. I have the skill set. And I got that job, and that started me off. So I always advise there are key moments in your career when there are opportunities. And I don't know if this is too much of a New Yorker to say it like this, but you got to like dig into them like a rabid dog going after a bone when those opportunities happen, because they're really the key moments that could send you on a different direction. Are there any final thoughts you'd like to leave our audience with? And maybe we can circle back to um, what's happening at Walmart. Obviously, you've helped define that, but the role is so massive for people who are trying to lead major organizations on the communication side, like yourself. What are some of the things that you're seeing? Are there trends, ideas?
The world is complicated. It's becoming more complex. It's certainly becoming more tech powered. AI is, the latest kind of, you can look at it as a disruption or you can look at it as an opportunity. I'm just an eternal optimist. And so my advice to any leader is, understand the challenges, but bring that optimism to your teams. Help them find hope. I think as a leader, your job is to always honor the past, be honest about the present, and give hope for the future. No one wants to work in an environment where there's not hope. And so I think those three things are really important as a leader. And then for a communications team, look, they're dealing with a lot of disruption. If you look at the universal trend of media fragmentation, The external world is tough, and you can't just understand communications. You understand, what's the pressure on your customer, your consumer, what's happening with stakeholders, what's happening from a policy environment, what's happening with your associates. And so you've got to look at things from so many different lenses and then be able to connect all those things. So that's where being a lifetime learner really comes in. You can't just look at, I'm communicating this. You have to understand the macro environment that you're operating in. And then I think as a leader of a comms team, I'm always saying to my team, like, hey, look, let's be kind, let's be thoughtful. Let's always give grace because it's a tough environment externally.
So I think one solution would be if you could be cloned to be more of a leader at many different organizations. But absent of that, people should be watching this podcast episode to learn so much from what you've had to say. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you.